Everyone, CPO here, and today I'm working on the TJ. Started this last week, basically was trying to figure out why we lost brakes. Boy, it's been probably a month now, and the thing's been parked, and I figured I would get to it later. My son is coming home for Christmas break, and I thought it would be a good idea to get this thing sorted out. So, what I found is this was the culprit. This is on the hard brake line on this passenger side here, and basically we had a blowout of the hard line. So replacing the hard lines, you can see here, I'm starting to pull those out, and then while I'm at it, thought may as well change out these nasty calipers. So I've got new calipers. Also going to change out the master cylinder while I'm at it. So yeah, this thing is getting all new hard lines. Right now, rear calipers. I'll look at the fronts when I get up there, and a new master cylinder. So yeah, let's just knock this thing out. All right, yeah, here's another look at the culprit before I took it off, but doesn't matter now because it is gone. Removing this soft brake line and the brackets holding it to the axle. Now, I do recommend getting flare nut wrenches for this project if you're going to do it. I know that there are ways around that, but this really is the best way to go. And if you have problems getting to the stripped and corroded nuts, then yeah, if you're going to replace the lines, just cut them. Use a socket to get there. So removing this little block that's on the back, this distribution block, it's also the vent for the axle. Lets me get these rear lines out of there. I thought the rear lines were going to be the hardest, and yeah, I was wrong. It's the front, but that's okay. It is what it is. And then this back soft line that connects the hard line that runs from the master cylinder back to the distribution block needs to be replaced as well. It's pretty nasty. Originally I was thinking about trying to save it, and then I just looked at it and realized, nah, I'm going to replace that. So yeah, then I'm pulling the hard line that runs along the frame. And again, I thought this was going to be hard to get out and a pain in the butt, but actually it came out fairly easily. So I'm removing it from the proportioning valve and basically pulled it just straight out through the engine compartment. Of course, it goes in differently, and I'll show you that here in a second. At least it went in differently for me, easily. Yeah, so now I am removing the caliper, the two caliper bolts there, and I'm just going to swap that out with the upgraded one, which fits right in nicely. And then putting those caliper bolts back in, getting them torqued down to spec. So Classic Tube is where I got these stainless steel hard lines from, and I highly recommend you checking them out. I looked at a lot of stainless steel line sets, and this by far was the best. They're all about the same price, about a couple $100. But this was the only one that I saw that came with the stainless steel braided hose that connects to the rear calipers. So most of these came with just bare ends that you had to connect existing hoses to, and finding hoses were a little bit challenging, specifically for those rears. Also, they were formed really well. I didn't have to do much reshaping on any of them. So I removed the bracket from the old hose line combination and basically put it onto the new ones. I also took off this little rubber piece that acts as a cushion for one of the brackets on the axle. And this has just got a little clip that sort of press fits into place. This one I pre-installed. The driver's side, I did it the opposite way. I mounted it to the axle first and then adjusted it and then clamped it down. I don't think it matters either way. It was just personal preference. So getting everything all tightened back down again. And then also looking for places to make sure that the lines are not rubbing on anything, making sure there's plenty of space around. The banjo bolt onto the hose. It did come with new copper washers, which is kind of nice and expected, of course. Get that tightened down, and then also torque to spec. And there we go. That is the rear passenger side. Same thing on the driver's side, although it took a little coercion to get that factory caliper off. Yeah, this thing's been sitting for a while, so things are a little bit rusty. Same thing, took off the bracket from the hose and line assembly, and then getting the clamp installed to the axle. Then once again, the banjo bolt goes on with a couple of the copper washers into the caliper, and then properly torqued down. And then, yeah, so here is that hose, the line that goes from the hard line from the front to the axle. This one was nothing fancy, but it is a little bit longer, which is sort of useful since we have a lift. And then the hardest part probably was just getting the two rear lines into that, that block on the axle. Now the hard line that goes from the front, I had to bend it back straight. It was sort of put into a U shape for shipping to fit into the carton. And then from underneath the Jeep, I slipped this under from the front to the rear, in between the skid plate and in the bottom of the Jeep. Got the rear connection made, then tightened down the rest of those mounting bolts, and clipped everything into place. And you could see the upper part ran just right up through there. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the master cylinder, and the first thing I need to do is take off the proportioning valve, which is mounted on top of that. Pull that down out of the way, and then the master cylinder should come off. Now the nuts used to hold that on, the new master cylinder came with new ones, so at least in my case. And the next line that I replaced was the driver's side front. That was a pretty easy. That's a short shot from the proportioning valve / master cylinder. I will say I had to wiggle a lot to sort of get it finangled out of there, but just be patient. And I didn't really have to bend anything out of shape to get it out or in, which is always handy. And then once I got it put into place, I just reattached it to the existing hose. I'm going to leave the front hoses and calipers alone on this Jeep. They're not in bad shape. The rear was really bad, but the fronts aren't bad, so I'll save that for another day. So this is the tricky one. This is the hard one. This is the passenger side front, and it's got a unusual route that makes it sort of challenging. It goes around the front. I did find the trick for me was being able to disconnect the mounting brackets for the sway bar, and then that allowed me to move the brake line over that instead of trying to work from under it, which would nearly be impossible. And I basically just pulled it out from the passenger side and then worked it around and out from the driver's side just over the tire there. This is the way that worked pretty easily for me. I was surprised that was the route that would make it work best. So yeah, I mean, your mileage may vary, but it worked out for me. So the new line going right back into the same place, right into that corner there. There's a little bumper that's underneath the radiator to the frame where the bumper is, and just slipping it through there and bringing it around, and then yeah, sort of finagling it and moving it over. So I'm going to spend a little time on video showing you this just so you can see how I had to maneuver it. So check this out.
Good.
All right, there we go. Once I got it all routed, I was able to connect it to the hose in the passenger front, and all that went fairly smoothly. Put back on the mounting brackets for the sway bar, and then just double check to make sure that I didn't have any binding or places where it was rubbing. When it does rub, I used the spring wraps that came with the lines, and yeah, got everything sort of back together. So like I said, this front one was definitely the most time consuming, just because you had to be patient and tedious with it. Next thing I need to do is this new master cylinder. I'm going to bench bleed it. So I happen to have a little vacuum pump for brake bleeding and diagnostics. There's a lot of different ways, a lot of different videos on how to bench bleed and the master cylinder and then bleed the brakes. I'm just using the pump. If I didn't have the pump, I probably would just go get one of those $5 one-man brake bleeding kits, the bottle with the hose and the magnet, and that seems to work really well. But yeah, like I said, I had this on hand, worked a treat for me. So again, the master cylinder goes back on with the new nuts, and then the proportioning valve connects underneath that using the same hardware that was previously used to mount it. And then also new lines that go from the master cylinder to the proportioning valve were included in the kit. So that's obviously got replaced. I don't know if you saw before, I actually cut one of those because again, some of the hardware was really rusted, the flange nuts. So I just cut them and then put a socket on there if I'm going to replace the line anyway. The socket's a much better way to do it than using a wrench. So yeah, topping everything off, and then I'm going to bleed the brakes. So that really is the end of the video. Yeah, bleed all 4 brakes and worked a treat, and test drive was successful. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.